in.
Oh
She's
yeah,
with a
I just landed.
yeah, just landed and from London, so you're probably on London time in a way.
On London
But
time, yeah.
I think it's a good place to start with you, Maisie, because you're investing globally in AI. You're on your
Yes.
second fund. You're gonna, the first fund was 50 years now at 100 million. You've got some, in your group invest in other things too, but I'm asking everybody to take 3, 4 minutes, and then we might have a quick question, and then we'll just move fast right along, and then we'll come back and have more of a group town hall discussion of these various, to say vectors or dimensions of AI today. And if you just give a 10-second intro, and then what you think is an insightful development that you're seeing around the world.
Yeah. I guess what they like capital is a fund manager in Singapore. As Mark mentioned, we're now onto our second fund. The first fund invested in Southeast Asia tech companies that accelerate the UN SDGs. Within that, we also have invested in big data companies. Really, AI is not a new thing. It's been around since the 80s. It's just that recently that the compute power is large enough that we could actually do significant things. So the second fund will be pure AI, but we're taking a very holistic view. So we're investing across the entire AI tech stack, from semiconductors to data center technologies to foundation models, data structures, and then top layer applications. So really companies are using AI to disrupt their incumbent markets. So I guess the biggest thing that we see today, of course, is DeepSeek. If you're on WeChat at all, you see there's just a buzz with stories about DeepSeek and what they're doing. So we think that's significant because it's an open source model. And I think the main thing is cheap, and it's not totally unexpected because we've all been saying out in Asia that given all these sanctions that have been put onto Chinese companies, they have to find a workaround. And we were expecting them now for the last at least a year or so to come up with something that would take less power, energy, and less compute power just because of all these sanctions. And now in a way they've done it. And yes, we can all cry foul that yes, they stood on the shoulders of giants, so to speak. I guess in technical term, it's distillation. So, but it's not a new thing. We've seen that happen before. We've seen Japanese cars come up and beat, European as well as US cars. So basically, it's once the technology is out there, once innovation is out there. Yes, it's hard to discover gravity, but once it's done, everyone knows it, and then you just move on and you build applications. So what I guess DeepSeek has done is that it now would democratize AI, so anyone can now build basically applications more cheaply. And I guess the immediate power question may not be as severe. I mean, we think. So we're kind of like looking at the thesis a little bit in terms of what do we do, for example, in semiconductors. We've been looking at companies that would basically do a direct implementation of transformer model. And I think even Cerebrus were talking about sparsity. Now DeepSeek has actually done that, right? In a way, that's already they've done some using sparsity of neural networks to actually to make the model more efficient. So we're looking at all these things but I guess fundamentally, we have never wanted to invest in LLMs, and basically nothing that's happened in the last couple of weeks has actually changed our view. So we're still not investing in LLMs, even as we look at other foundation models.
Excellent. Any questions to Maisie? She's basically the markets you're investing in are Southeast Asia, Europe, and the North America, US.
Yeah, so globally, obviously, it's a big word. So we're really focusing 75% of the fund on the four AI/tech hubs of US, Canada, UK, and Singapore. Singapore is not yet an AI hub, but it's an aspiring one, aspiring to be one, and
Hmm.
it's home. And it's certainly a tech hub and very much a regional play in Southeast Asia. So 75% of the fund will go to those geographies and 25% to the rest of the world. If you map that across the AI tech stack, what we'll say is that probably in these four regions, you get companies across the entire AI tech stack, but in the rest of the world, be really applications. But I guess in some sense, I mean, it is the application to make a lot of money. And basically
Hmm.
the whole core tech stack, it is dangerous. It takes a lot of care to invest in it because there's a saying that it's the second mouse that gets the cheese. So we have to be careful. I mean, like what we can invest in, what we can't in terms of the core stack.
I have a,
Any other?
I have a
Go ahead.
question, Mark.
Mhm.
Sure.
Hi. So this is a dumb question. The question is, how is it that for the likes of the perception and reality and public expression of dislike from the US administration and the like towards China and China's security as it relates to tech? So for an example, Tencent, you're on the blacklist because it's a defense issue, but then Tencent are a massive stakeholder in Epic, and Epic is in most people's homes because their children engage with the games in which they play. So how can it?
Yeah.
So it's sort of two sides in the mouth. How can it apply on the one hand, but then not on the other hand? Because as adults, we all know that things are absolute. It's not, you don't say to the kid, you can drink Coca-Cola, but you can't, right?
Yeah.
You can eat sugar or you can't eat sugar. So how can on the one hand, TikTok's a threat, but Epic Games is not a threat, for example, right? How is it
Yeah.
that to bring it in on the deep seek, it's clearly on the face of it, as we know, been invented by a non-US national on non-US soil in China, but it's open source, but it's being embraced by the public globally and in the US. So how is the use of DeepSeek not a security threat to the US? Given so my question is,
Maybe that is the question. Let's just stop
why
with
is
that.
there such a gray
If you
area?
want to keep it
I
going.
guess to your first question, I guess it's not black and white because it's politics. I think if it wasn't China, if it's some other country that's not challenging US hegemony,
Correct.
I don't think
I
this question
agree.
will arise. So I don't think it at all is about, and I guess, there's a lot of talk about routers, but a lot of US routers, I guess, might have a backdoor for US guys. Maybe the Chinese routers may not have a backdoor for US guys, and they're afraid the Chinese government might have. I don't know. Maybe these are just conjecture, right? But really, it's because of politics, and that's the reason why you have all this fight. If it's not China challenging US for the top position in economics and now trying to challenge for place in the world, I don't think all these would be as deeply contested as we see now. Yeah, that's my view. Yeah, and I guess a lot of it. I mean, the concern is also about where the data is located. So I guess if it's an open source model, anyone can develop it. They can put the data on their own premise. It doesn't have to go back to China, for example. So in a sense, people can embrace it easily because if it's an open source model, you know exactly what it's doing. So there's less concern that it's not a black box in that sense. Yeah.
So Maisie will be around.
I'll be around. Yeah, I can't sleep. I'm jet lagged.
Can't sleep for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't sleep for a while. Yeah.
I wanted to move on to you, Cheryl, a different vector. We've been talking about, we all going to have our AI agents. Maybe we have 100 of them, and we're training them for different purposes. But you have a certain thought on the paradigm, on how this is evolving.
Right. Well, we all know
And
that.
just introduce yourself if you could.
Oh, thank you. I'm Cheryl Cunningham, CEO of Hero AI. We are basically creating a shift in intelligence, and we're democratizing it and making it sovereign as well. We believe that there is a new era of intelligence. I understand we're already, in a new era of intelligence, but I'm talking about, what is this next future? And this, currently it's already reshaping the way we work, we communicate, innovate, but I put it to you that it's no longer just becoming a tool. Now we really have to shift and think about the infrastructure of this progress, right? So the next question will be, how do we then remain open, sovereign, and not just that, but universally accessible to all? So what this means is we can't just have it centralized or controlled by a select few. We actually have to open it up and make it, modular, decentralized, and personally owned, hyper personalized to each and every single one of us individuals. So our, this vision of the future is not that AI will be locked inside these, huge data centers, but it will actually be delivered through fiber optics, your satellite signals. That's going to be this next generation of AI networks. What does that mean? AI being delivered through this next generation networks. It means, let's take, for example, Africa. You've got 1.4 billion people in Africa. A lot of them have 2G phones and 3G phones. They don't have access to smartphones. So these people can't access ChatGPT. You have a huge segment of humanity, about 60%, that's not necessarily catching up to the rest of the world, right? The 40% are accelerating way beyond, but what about that 60%? So, with being able to deliver AI through networks, what you then have is people who own 2G, 3G phones be able to say, pick up the phone and communicate in their native language and have their AI interpret instantly to somebody in China. So why is this important in opening up the whole African market, for example? And that's just one market. Think, for example, that little, female entrepreneur making little baskets. She's never been able to get out of her country before, but now she can communicate with the factory in China and be able to communicate with them instantly, be able to, reach out to investors across the globe and, to fund her project, be able to hire salesmen in, say, the US to be able to scale her business through these, BizDeck partners across the globe. So this is just the beginning of where we believe, the future is leading. To sum it up, basically, it's AI in the future must be sovereign. It must be deeply personal because each of us, we're very different individuals. And it must understand and evolve along with us.
Yep.
And this is where, inserting it through telecoms is really the only way to truly democratize this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Michael, you have a question for Cheryl?
Well, it's actually a comment as we talk about AI, and I'm putting the link into the chat. There's recent research out of Carnegie Mellon and Microsoft that even casual use of AI results in degradation of critical thinking. And I found it very interesting.
Yeah, that's another vector.
Well, if there's one silver lining to that, Mark, if I can volunteer it, it would be that yes, while critical thinking in the conventional sense, true, but it's teaching us to be able to ask questions in a way that's almost a new language in itself.
Yep.
And by harnessing the power of this massive database of knowledge, I think we may actually have more benefit than loss. I do appreciate the thoughts of the article.
So I know I'm toting my liberal arts background at Denison, but I think what they've been doing in liberal arts thinking is they've been moving on to design thinking, and I know that AI can do that too, because we have AI. I don't think Yasmin is here, but we're developing and learning and teaching our own beta, and it's like I can't it can't read my mind about workflows and processes. At least I don't think, but it's an interesting vector. But I want to keep moving. And Mark Higton, I know you have to leave soon. Are you on? Do you want to chime in?
Hi, yes. I'm not sure I said I had to leave soon, but I
Well,
have
you asked to go first, so
yeah, I asked to go first actually because I wanted to try to wrap some things together with some thoughts, and I'll try to be as coherent as possible. So, my background is as a practitioner. I started at IBM developing machine learning applications in industry. So I found a second member to join Cat Analytics, but from IBM back in 1996. We were actually doing a lot of work with Caterpillar to automate their machines globally. So it led to some very interesting work. But I think as a computer scientist and an economist, I think it's very interesting when one is trying to look at resources and how one should apply. So I always think, I'm an idealist or a realist? Because it's very important when you're working in this field. So everyone knows about the Turing test. Very few people talk about the Turing machine, right? And this is quite an important thing because the Turing machine is an LLM, right? So when he defined the Turing machine, it is an LLM, but it's a general purpose LLM for everything, right? It'll solve all problems. And he put it out there because it's an open source problem. It's a challenge to mathematicians. It's to other people. Roger Penrose, other people engaged on this in terms of quantum computing. Maybe this is the way that we can solve this Turing machine definition, right? So, and Turing was very interested in all forms of mathematics, from Greek philosophy and so forth. So he understood very much some of the ideas around semiosis, the binding problem in neuroscience, when children basically highly conceptualize and develop their own realities and worlds, and how they internalize that and express it outwardly. And we all do this, right? So, sorry.
I was just trying to see where your point is going. Sorry.
Yeah, no, let me get there, right? So, there's been a number of themes. So reinforcement learning is, everyone is talking about it now, right? Because of DeepSeek. Was reinforcement learning important 25 years ago? Of course it was. Were people working on reinforcement learning? Yes, they were, right? But supervised and unsupervised learning became the norm, and brute force methodologies, right? And the reason why brute force has become so popular is popularized by Asimov, and to a lesser degree Philip Dick, and people like Musk and other kind of people have really tapped into this when they discuss about OpenAI, etc. The reason is because brute force solved problems for Tesla, for their automated driving systems, right? And they then could capitalize on the market cap to say, well, we solved these very basic problems using brute force. Now we can solve everything, and we're going to do this through another raise, right? But at the same time, if we look at, and it's very, so I want to make this very important definition right here. Everyone is now talking about blockchain. You know, blockchain was how everything worked in the 1940s, 1950s. Everything worked on ledgers. Digital ledgers were, they're very expensive to implement because of the actual amount of processing time they required, and also the amount of the cost of data. So most few firms could really run large-scale electronic ledgers, and this created IBM and Ed Cod. He created the referential database, and why? That's right.
I feel like you deserve more time, but can you
I'm
give
going to
a
wrap up. I'm
wrap
going to
a
wrap up very
Yeah.
quickly. I'm going to wrap up very quickly. I'm moving quite quick, right? So if you look at the way ledgers, referential databases work, the reason why COD defined that, IBM defined the referential database, was because he defined something which null is not zero, right? He said this in 1956. He said it again in 1970s. It's like null is not zero. It means null is the unknown and how we interpolate data. But let me let me get here, Mark, please. So Goldman Sachs developed DB second slang, right? Slang was one of the most advanced fourth, fifth generation languages, right? And when
No, no.
people started to leave Goldman Sachs, a group of people think, how can we develop the equivalent of slang, right? And Python, all of the development in Python in the financial community has more or less been done to basically take us where slang is, and we would not now be where we are today.
Where do you want to go with this, Mark? Because you're in weeds that I can't even get to. I'm just trying, because as everyone's just sort of weighing in, I want to keep it going.
Yeah, no. No, let me. You've interrupted several times, and so
But
for example,
you only have 4 minutes. That you've taken a lot more than that.
Open source. I'm not sure I have. Open source, right, has been with us right at the beginning with Turing, right? He actually encouraged lots of people to try different methodologies, the academic community, companies, etc. COD was basically talking about open source solutions, right? So there was, for a brief period of time, some of this technology is being captured because of the way in which processing time and APGs, when advanced graphic cards came in,
I
it was
don't
for
know where
all
you're
of
going
us
with
to have
where
at
you're
home.
going with this,
right?
Mark. If you're trying to wrap it up, because you've got more information than I can handle. I'm just trying
Well,
to
it's an illusion. I think a lot of VCs provide an illusion of progress, which all the core ideas were there when Turing did this. A lot of them were in the 1890s, even longer. It's the application. Obviously, if you monopolize resources, you can capture technology. But the scale of this technology is so large. This is very, very big. So everyone's now talking about democratizing this technology, but it's always been democratized. People haven't just seen it, and with thousands of people working in their bedrooms, trying things, doing things in these open source communities, particularly through Python. And Python has been seminal in actually seeing this development, because most people are writing in Python. They are updating all of the Python libraries, and then they're developing their own engines and their own code libraries that sit on top of Python and lower level languages like DeepSeek.
So where do you want, again, I was looking for like where do you, like, what's your main point so that we can move on, and because it has been 7-8 minutes.
Yeah, so the main point is people can talk about, there's this debate about, is it dangerous, isn't it dangerous, how can you control the internet? The whole point, the reason why Berners-Lee didn't patent it was because he understood that you can't control it, essentially, right? And people still talk about, Trump in this last government talked about, how can we legislate the internet, right?
Okay. All right, well, let me go from, I guess that's the very theoretical, philosophical, but not unimportant. We need to have these discussions, to someone who's deploying capital like Cenifer. I don't know how long she's going to be with us, so she just jumped on here. We're just talking about insights as it relates to AI as you see it. Where is it going? Where's the puck going? Maybe from one of your investing angles, or however you want to speak to it.
I think one of the things that we've been asked about a lot this year is the concentration of wealth as a result of the investment into AI. So I think the scale of the companies has really been lost in a lot of the narrative here. Like, all AI is not equally funded. And I forget if it was Q4 or all of last year. It's on my list to Google this stat today, but OpenAI sucked up 1/5 of all venture capital to move through the US. In either Q4 or last year, but probably that was thematic throughout. And so this by concentration of these large AI companies and these really amazingly talented smaller players, I would like to see the industry of VC step up to the plate and start funding founders again, instead of, mega companies that we need to crash land on the stock market to create a return.
And maybe you want to give an example of something that excites you today? One of those micro companies?
Yeah. So Praxi Data is a company out of Silicon Valley, and they're doing AI to get your data ready for AI. So essentially they're using AI to solve the garbage in, garbage out problem of AI, because so much of what's stopping a lot of the progression of good AI right now is just data processing and getting it ready. And, the way I like to think about it is that if your business case is dependent on Gen Z using Excel, you're dead. So I don't know if any of you live with younger people, but they're not going to sit there and clean data in a spreadsheet. And that's what's holding a lot of this up. And so there's a lot of founders meeting that space where it is. And Praxi's processing all the healthcare data for the DoD, which is still run like a manual HR process now. So I love founders that are bridging the gap between, I think the Valley's gotten really far out over its skis in terms of just applicability. But the founders that are bridging that to really helpful use cases are what get me excited about this technology.
Cool. Dieter, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I want to share 2 investments. We have, as you know, a partner in the blockchain.
Are you trying to talk your book? Is that what it's a talk your book comment?
No, my book?
You're blowing the horn of your portfolio. I don't want to do too much of that. That's all.
Okay. Only 1 to 2 examples where we invested using AIs by our portfolio companies.
Okay.
But I can do it next time.
Well, maybe is there a lesson that you've learned from this that's one of them?
No, these are 2 companies we invested, and they're using AI for different
Well, maybe name one of them that you're excited about.
So one is Sandbox AQ, which is a Google spin-off where we
a lot of people around here are in Sandbox AQ.
With co-invested with Eric Schmidt, who was the original chairman. And they're using AI together with quantum computing, as you know. They just raised close another $300 million fund. around bringing it to 5.6 billion. The second one, where we are the early investors, the first investor, is Invenian Capital, a market leader for asset management and data, and they're using AI for real estate asset management. Big investments partners are BlackRock, Cushman and Wakefield, and others. So one is the tokenization of real estate using AI to do the data, and the other is Sandbox for quantum computing for solving healthcare problems in the future with AI and quantum.
Got it. Yeah, there's a lot of people in
And
Sandbox.
both are profitable.
So before we get to you, Dekai, Peter Thurlow, are you still on? You want to just chime in on what you're seeing in the legal landscape?
Sure. So Pete Thurlow, as Mark knows, I know a number of you on it from hosting meetings for Mark in my office in Midtown, New York. I see Depinder and Andy and others. My expertise is intellectual property and patent law for the last 25 years. People talk about patents and intellectual property theft from China. I work with different administrations, the Chinese government, US government, Commerce Department, and others on that. So anybody needs information on that, I can help. When I joined my firm 9 years ago, or I went to the early stage side after being at Jones Day. So all the companies need capital. So I met great people like Mark and just kind of how to get into the capital area. And now I work with a lot of family offices. And in addition to that, which I'll get into, I was in the military. So I currently work as an advisor, volunteer to DARPA, where we go down to Arlington, Virginia, at least quarterly. And then we travel the country just on talking technology deals. So I see a lot more than just IP. Last week, we had a meeting in New York about a lot of people from the US and state government came in, all defense technology, about 200 or 300 people attended. So there's much more of a collaboration between the government and private industry on investments. AI is obviously a hot area. I'll start with DARPA, and then I'll go to the private practice and healthcare. You can appreciate that DeepSeek did raise a lot of concerns throughout the United States and the world. I think the nice woman who spoke earlier used the word hegemony. You know, it's looking more kind of who can control that technology going forward. From a DARPA military standpoint, we're using AI very high level in the drone space. Also, Mark previously discussed some work in Riyadh. So there's, like, to give you an example, quantum physics technology to map the Earth, use the data from that mapping to find out where the rare earth minerals are, because that's become such a big issue, as Stephen Burke mentioned. Those projects are going on in the Middle East, in Riyadh, throughout the Middle East. We recently met with the governor in Utah. There's a lot of that work going on and out west in the United States to map our resources and then find ways to extract it. And then a more common basic issue with all the CHIPS Act and so on is more kind of chip design. And then someone mentioned, I think Gerard or someone mentioned about data centers. Plenty of data centers that we're working on, technology, people, government, and then private families are investing in data centers more recently in Texas. The issue that we have there that a lot of money is going into is the energy supply to those to minimize. Right now, they're just taking up too much energy. So a lot of focus on cooling technologies.
Have you seen any geothermal?
Geothermal has been around such a long time. It's a capacity issue just with the Earth. We've actually seen some discussion of putting the data centers in kind of cooling towers like they do at nuclear facilities with the nuclear rods in the ocean and cooling like environments. So there's a lot of different ideas being thrown around from that, Mark, but that's what I'll say on that.
I think we were talking earlier in the pre-call, just what's patentable, right? With open source
so there's,
and otherwise.
You know, at a very high level, how do we protect this technology? So I had the commissioner of the patent office in my office in Midtown and 30 senior people in my office, including people from Google. A lot of patents being issued in that space. It's a combination of patents and trade secrets. The concern with patents, and it's been always a concern, is is the you can get the patents, but the ability to territorial, so you only get a patent in the United States. The information in the patent gets disclosed. So there's been some issues between the U.S. government and China that I mentioned that we worked on years ago, where we had some Chinese entities when the application became publicly available 18 months after the filing date, that the Chinese entities were scrubbing them for particular technology areas of interest and then refiling those applications in China under their own name. So there is real technology wars going on, and what can be protected and so on. But to answer your question, Mark, we're using a combination of patents and trade secrets. Someone mentioned copyright, not as much in that space, but a little bit.
Got it. I'm going to keep it moving. If it's okay, we got 3 more speakers. And Nick, you've just popped on here. So thank you. So Nick, you've been in, I don't know, 100 plus now. Not only do you have 100 plus portfolio companies, you have 100 plus LPs who are tech engineers, which is unique. That's your community. But how do you see, I mean, you were with us in Florida, but people are sharing insights, you know, any 1 or 2 in particular that you see today?
So basically every other week is a major breakthrough, and I think the industry got used to the pace of innovation. So it feels like nothing's happening, but it's really, there is a lot. So some of the major trends continue. So the underlying cost of AI is going down. Efficiency, you know, like token per kilowatt hour is increasing. Probably we're going to see 10, 20 times increase in efficiency this year alone. Then the models are becoming more capable. So their GPT-5, whatever it is probably going to be very large and expensive to compute, but then distillation comes to rescue. So everybody's going to create their own versions of more specialized stuff. Overall application layer looks really, really good because the cost is going down, whereas the growth is pretty unmatched. So the majority of vertical agents that found product market fit in our portfolio are growing 20-30% month over month organically, like no marketing, just, you know, word of mouth. What's incredible is that they don't need much more capital to do that. Like 15 companies in the portfolio have like 4 or 5 engineers and staff, and that's it. They don't need more. Biotech is seeing a crazy influx of new teams, and I'd call it tech bio now. So because there are now more AI people than bio people doing biotech on early stage. And they're also seeing some incredible results. Still quite early to say that, you know, they're super practical, but one of our portfolio companies just got their first revenue, and that's 17 million, which is pretty damn incredible for their Alzheimer's drug. So there's a lot of stuff happening there. Robotics is still quite early, but we're seeing some companies achieve feasible results. One of our autonomous welding company is quickly got from like 3 million ARR last January to 15 million ARR this January. So robotics is catching up with well, as they're solving the hardware bottleneck. Some Chinese companies are solving that, and then a few American ones. We're also going to see a lot more there. But overall, like, we're big proponents of investing in the application layer, ignoring the big foundational level AGI game, because I personally believe it's going to become a commodity. But, you know, there's another school of thought that AGI is going to kill the whole of the application layer. One of my idols, who's unfortunately now dead, co-founder of Yandex, Ilya, Jesus, what's his last name? Ilya Segalovich. He said this incredible phrase that I think it was 2002 when he said it. Said that progress is unstoppable, but of course, nothing's gonna work. And and I think this holds true still. Nothing can be made truly functional without, adjusting, fine-tuning, without the engineering work. So we'll see a lot more progress. We'll see a lot more demand for that progress with this, all of the crazy amount of money coming into. And I just talked to MGX on Friday. They're investing tens of billions of dollars into AI infra, and this kind of investment. So Stargate's gonna more than double compute available in the US. We currently have around 55 gigawatts of compute. That's probably Stargate's gonna add another 70. But then Stargate's it's only Oracle, Microsoft, and OpenAI, and then like separately from Stargate, there's xAI, there's Meta, there's Google, there's Amazon that are also gonna build, another like 30 plus gigawatts of compute each within the next 5-10 years, which tells us that AI is going to be everywhere, pretty much like electricity. But you know what's interesting? The last thing I wanted to say is that despite our cost, like what we generate investment memos for our fund, and when we started, we were just basically translating investment decks into memos, like putting stuff into CRM and then creating a memo, no information added. And that cost us like $4 or $5 per memo because we wanted to make sure that we don't hallucinate. Today, it's 35 cents, and we have added 17 different data sources. We're like tracking, what kind of people they're hiring, what kind of network these people have, and like what kind of impact on revenue it's going to have. But our overall AI bill in the fund has gone up 10x. And I can say pretty surely that next year we're probably going to be measuring their body temperature and heart rate variability, and including this into our investment analysis. And we're going to be doing this not only across the companies we see, but across the whole industry. And it's going to every token is going to cost us 20 times less, but our overall AI spend's probably going to go up to a few $1 million a year.
So last question, what's your most exciting company right now?
Oh, Perplexity, of course. Second one's probably Etched AI. They're making chips for
what's the website for it?
Etched.ai. And then Perplexity.
ETC.
ETCHED.
.ai.
And then another one, Kick.co. So KICK.co. They got 300K ARR December, and then $1 million this month, and then next month's probably going to be $2 million. It's an AI bookkeeper. Crazy growth, all organic.
Okay, we have just to show you all. This is our AI. I just put the website in. Now we haven't put much in it, but I can put data sources in it. I can ask my assistant. This is what we've done with Clever. I have a sell side, a buy side collaboration, and that's just a sneak peek. I can't go too far into it yet.
Mark, don't pull the trigger yet. It said low confidence, and Nick is a great investor.
Well, the point is I don't have data to go higher confidence yet. I'm just beginning to put that data together. We have I know you got Adam and Bill, but we have Lydia and then Dekai. If it's possible, Lydia's just arrived into San Francisco from Europe. She's got reverse jet lag, so she may be tired. But let's let her speak if you could, Lydia. How are you seeing this in the industrial side? Then we'll go to Dekai. I thought I saw you, Lydia. Are you not on? And if not, then our cleanup batter, being Dekai, sometimes he can be inspiring and sometimes he can be, he makes us think that the world is coming potentially to an end. So let's, do you want to, where do you see the world today, Dekai?
It's interesting. I'll reserve my comments about whether the world is coming to an end for other sessions and just point you at the book. We are 3 months from my book coming out. It's going to be the top title from MIT Press in May, in spring. And you can get all the links to it from my website, which is I think my name here. It is literally my name, dek.ai. But just focus on latest developments. I'm going to add just, I think, 2 comments. One, I have, and some of you have heard me in the past, I have been trying to warn people and trying to predict to people that DeepSeek was going to happen for literally for years. For probably about 20 years now, I've been telling everybody true AI is small and smart, not big and dumb. The LLMs that we're seeing right now, for the last 2 years, everybody's running around making predictions based on the assumption that AI is or has the properties of what we've been seeing. And you see that in the discussions about the amount of energy that AI requires and all that kind of stuff. And it's implicitly based on the incorrect assumption that AI is these incredibly gas-guzzling, big and dumb brute force machines. And it's not. Real AI is going to be a far more efficient learner, a far more efficient generalizer, because that's what intelligence is. And we have plenty of empirical evidence in the form of human learners that it does not, it takes an exponentially less compute, exponentially less data to get more accurate learnings than LLMs are doing. And so I actually have been pointing out, both on the AI governance side as well as on the technical side, that every attempt to try to restrict the pace of development in AI by putting limits and thresholds on the amount of compute power is going to backfire completely. I wrote an op-ed already in early October last year, submitted to one of the top newspapers in the US that I'm not going to name publicly. They were not savvy enough to pick it up, but it literally warned about this, both in terms of legislation like the EU's AI Act and the failed California SB 1047, that putting thresholds on compute power was going to actually accelerate development of true AI because it incentivizes people to use less compute and less data. And then the second half literally pointed out that the same thing applied to the sanctions on China and now other countries with respect to GPU power. And indeed, that is what we have seen. And the most disturbing thing to me is the shock and surprise universally after a handful of us have been trying to warn about this literally for a decade and a half. So I really wish that people would pay a little bit more attention to the predictions of people who actually understand deep tech from 40 years of research, that sort of thing, because I feel that people are still not paying attention to the follow-on predictions. By the way, to that end, you can read the original op-ed from October. I tweeted, so my Twitter or my X handle is Dekai123, and I tweeted a link to where I posted that op-ed. The other point that I would make is that this is the tip of the iceberg, and I'm going to be writing more about that on the same place I posted that, which is my Substack, my new Substack. The way that DeepSeek is doing this is still not anywhere near the most efficient way to do this. What we need to do is we need to understand that the shock that DeepSeek has created, the shock that GPT created 2 years ago, is kindergarten compared to what is coming in the next 2 years. And I keep seeing all these confident statements, and I don't think people have a clue. The stuff that is coming is going to be revolutionary. We are already seeing tons of it in the university level research stuff that the public isn't aware of. We're doing some of it in our own labs. We know what the breakthroughs require. It is only a matter of time right now. All the pieces are there, and so stay tuned.
Hey, Dee, sorry, it's a good summary. I think you're making the same point I was making. I was trying to give a summary of all the tech and where we are now and how it's coming together. But why do you say that you've warned against it, right? Because my attitude is, and what I was trying to get to in the discussion, is that investors can invest in early stage technology, right? And you can try to capture the upside, and one in 10, 1 in 20, whatever, can be massive successes. But ultimately, even if you have invested in those winners, you cannot control this technology and the evolution. And isn't that a warning anyway? If you think you're going to invest into technology, you're going to control it, then you're investing for the wrong reasons, perhaps.
I'm not sure what the question was.
No, so why do you say it's a warning? A warning to investors? You say I've warned about this, but you're also saying it's inevitable, right?
I have said
What's
both
the
that I
contradiction?
warned and that I predicted. I warned to those who were trying to slow down the pace of AI that it was going to backfire, which it has, and it will continue to do so to an even more exponentially large extent. It will continue to accelerate the development of AI to try to restrict the amount of compute power. That is simple logic. There are also people who, and there are two reasons people are trying to decelerate the pace of AI development. One is this AI safety, sort of the so-called decelerationist, or a lot of them associate with the effective altruists. That's one reason, and the other is the politics. People are, obviously the U.S. is trying to slow China down, but we'll see other instances of that emerge in the coming years as people begin to realize just how close the breakthroughs are.
But aren't the maximalists also trying to shock people? So, for example, I mentioned Musk, and I mentioned other individuals that focused on more Asimov and this dystopian community, right? And that actually speaks about the need to control, right? Because if you can then legislate and you control the legislation, then you can actually have a bigger influence on the technology, right? So even the maximalists themselves are looking to control through legislation. And you're correct; they've got it wrong, perhaps, in how they see some of this.
Elon is many things. He's not a math. Even Elon gets it wrong.
He portrays himself as one, and he creates this following amongst maximalists.
Let's move on. I
That's
just want to
two
make
separate topics.
Well, we have some questions. Hands up from Adam and Bill. Adam.
Yes, Mark. Actually, quite appropriate that we have Dakai here, because I want to refer back to my question is about DeepSeek and the need to control the data sources of DeepSeek. And I recall one of these calls that we had with Dakai talking about the information that is being withheld when you do these searches. And that, I think, is one of the security issues that the United States has with DeepSeek. And maybe Dakai, you can elaborate on that a little bit more.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Two comments. One, I think that's symmetric. The thing that you're referring to was my comments about the most unconscious but powerful ways that AIs are manipulating our psychologies, specifically that it's through the power of what they decide what to not show us, because we don't know what we're not shown. But that comment applies as much to AIs on our side in the US as well as in China. And it isn't necessarily about laws, it's about biases. And the biases are huge. The biases on X, Twitter are huge. The biases on, all the meta products are huge. It doesn't matter where it's coming from. We have that problem. It is a general problem, and it is very much one of the main topics of the book I mentioned earlier. So that's something I'm happy to discuss separately. I think the other comment I would make to that is most people are not aware that the guardrails that are filtering out certain kinds of content. So, for example, DeepSeek won't give substantive answers if you ask about the Tiananmen incident or if you other things. Those are implemented not in the DeepSeek engine itself. They're implemented in the user interface layer. It's just a kind of a brute force way that kind of scans the response, and then if the response triggers certain things, then it kind of blocks it. But that is the same architecture as OpenAI and many of the others. The core engine, the actual LLM, doesn't have that. And if you download the open source version of DeepSeek and install it on your own machine, you can get it tell you anything you want. It doesn't have those guardrails. I think that's not necessarily a security issue for the US or for anybody else.
And Bill and Giovanni.
Thank you,
Bill,
Takai.
Bill, you first. Thanks for your patience, both of you.
Can I talk?
Bill's first, then you. Go ahead, Bill. Unless you're on, you figured out your unmute thing.
Second floor or first floor.
Uh-oh, Bill, you're we can't hear you. We're gonna
Read description.
It doesn't show you as muted, but you are.
How's that? Is that better?
There you go. There you go. Yep.
The new machine, everything is hidden. An upgrade is always an oxymoron. So at any rate, no, this has been really good. I think from an allocator standpoint, I'm seeing this to be AI being very similar to blockchain in terms of its tech stack, and in particular to pick up on a couple of points that have been mentioned already, kind of the picks and shovels and the applications, I think could very well be the place where we see a lot of really interesting activity. Those are somewhat hard to find. I will say I have found one VC firm, which, full disclosure, I've actually started advising as well, that is focused on those areas with revenue generating companies, and it's quite rare, but it's really interesting. And I think particularly to Kai's point about small AI, totally agree with that. So it would be interesting.
Well, you should also look at even though you're not a part of it, you should look at Nick's fund and Senator's fund. They also have revenues.
Yes. No,
and by the way, since for Survey 19 that you're the co-chef on, should we have an AI set of questions?
I will look at it. You did get my draft.
I did.
Okay.
But I'm just thinking AI is making me think that we should rethink everything. Maybe we should let AI just draft it.
I guess it depends a lot on the complexion of the 25th. If there are others there, we shouldn't let AI dominate. Not that it probably won't anyway.
It's all tech sectors, but AI will go across, as you know. But anyway, I'm sorry, but you and I will talk later today.
Yes.
But
anyway, so small AI and picks and shovels and applications, interesting. I've seen a little bit of that, but happy to get some input from you all.
Yeah, I mean, my one response is that yes, from an allocator standpoint, I meant to say this earlier, and not just in terms of warnings and predictions. From the allocator perspective, I think that there will be more breakout companies that are small. nobody knows about them right now, but expect some really incredible unicorns that come from, for most of the public, come out of left field because of this.
Yeah, it
So-
feels a lot like that. Yes, thank you.
So Giovanni, but you have a question?
Yes. I ride this AI wave. The way I'm doing it right now is picks and shovels. I'm invested into data centers. But now that I'm getting some good returns there, I'm willing to do some investments in individual companies or whatever. If I understand correctly, one of the Achilles heel of my investment thesis is the efficiency of computer processing, much in the same way as there was, I don't know, that Moore's law that said computer processing will double every 18 months and get half the price, and so on and so forth. What is the rate presently right now in sort of computer processing efficiency, and was DeepSeek a far more efficient sort of processing or computer quantitative processing thing? Because I'm investing in data centers, so I'm investing in the electricity and the machines. So what does the curve look like for efficiency in computer processing? What should I be looking for?
Maybe
What's the Moore's
maybe
law
that's-
for?
Maybe that's a
Yes.
question to you, Gerod, since you just hold your thought to Kai, because Gerod hasn't had a chance to speak yet. 'Cause that's what you've been focusing on.
Well, I went through the same kind of circle on we've been looking at the energy side, right? And if the data centers don't need the energy infrastructure that we think they do because things are getting much more efficient. The data points I have, that's the same data point from two different sources. One was Andreessen Horowitz a few months ago said the token cost is dropping, is 10% of what it was last year, and it will continue. So we're dropping by 90% a year. And Sam Altman said that in his blog last week too. So 10% is kind of the number each year. So it's 10 times better than it was a year ago, and it'll keep going. So then as it creates the question, do we really need all the resources, the physical resources we need to run all this AI? And I came full circle, because I looked at the usage patterns and said, first of all, context windows are going to get bigger and bigger because we're working with a lot more data. We're working with the chat sessions we're including history. So context windows that may be 10x the resources. The use of APIs, and tools, and talking to like chatter between agents, maybe that's another 10 times the resources. Another 10x I look at is, or maybe 100x, is operators in autonomous agents that are doing what we normally in a kind of an interactive LLM session. The agent will do maybe 100 times a day or 1,000 times a day. So these are the kind of things, and just generally induce demand, that as things get cheaper, the demand will go up. So I kind of came full circle. I said, we don't know what the resource needs are going to be, data center and power and things like that, but I can be confident to say that all of this building for data centers is probably not a bubble, and more will be needed.
Thank you. I wanted to hear that.
I can rationalize for myself at least.
So
if I may offer
ahead,
a counter perspective,
yes,
the type of energy that's going to be needed for the type of AIs that's going to be coming out in the next couple of years is going to be exponentially less. Let me just leave it at that. Happy to follow up. I
So
know
you
we're on
think
the
we'll need less energy?
We are going to need much less energy. The amount of energy AI is using right now because of LLMs is a transitory blip.
Can you elaborate in terms of energy? You've seen that in some of the big utilities and others like GE, and then globally, Siemens Energy, Schneider. Mitsubishi out of Tokyo, Japan. All of these have had explicit 24-month ballistic bull runs. More recently, later on in that cycle, the last 3-4 months, particularly in the press tied to what we're talking about now. How much, if you know, of their future output is tied to the AI? And then obviously we've seen with some of the large Mag 7 tying into that and using US CEG, blah, 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 Nextera, and so on, locally here to fulfill that. Is that going to be derailed? And you know, should one be short those stocks, or is there more to it that's going on? If anyone knows in the group.
I don't want to make hard investment predictions about shorting. What I will say is two things. One, lemmings, who are not very informed on what's actually going on in deep AI tech research. Beware of that. Two, reminder what happened to NVIDIA stock when DeepSeek came out, as an example, a precautionary example.
No, totally. And I agree. I mean, a while ago, Mark, you'd sent out when Microsoft, it was a few weeks or probably a month ago now, and the
80
lights,
billion.
right, this deep thing. And my response to that immediately was, you know, this CapEx is massive. It's distributed largely amongst these big hyperscalers. And when and where and if does the payout come? Now, my thinking was that I see them as warehouses or buildings of super bright, smart people. And collectively, when they do things, it's not just, you know, flip the switch. It's coming from a deep-seated, no pun intended, but, you know, ideology backed up with facts as to what they're going to do and need. And so there's this, call it yin and yang, and sort of how does it play out? Because on the one hand, why, you know, 80 billion times 5, so $1 trillion of capex is nothing to laugh at. What if indeed what you're saying, Dakai, is correct? And I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with you. I think you may be right. And I had the same premise then. Why is there $1 trillion, give or take, of collective spend if in fact it doesn't amount to anything, which in fact just has a short-term, potentially radical impact on their pricing, because they're all reporting quarterly, and it will have a material impact if there's nothing coming back. So what is the end game? Do they know something, in other words, that we don't know, is what I'm
No, I think it's the opposite. It's the same reason why so much has gone into, you know, not just NVIDIA, but also alternatives to NVIDIA. Like, I mean, people are just making bets based on misguided assumptions about where AI is headed.
I mean, let's just throw one thing in here. Every time there's been a surge to anything, it's ended badly. If we go back the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whether it was green energy and everything related to that, including EVs, whether it was cannabis, right? If you bought any of those instruments at or near the top, you are dead meat, right? You only have tears, regret, and pain. And so to your point, why would this be different? That's a reasonable question. All these majors have ended in pain.
So Anthony, I'm going to jump in, and first off, it's a race. So any of these players feel they can't afford to sit it out and watch others run the race, even with the risk of it ending badly. As far as the investor side of it, putting up the money, they've been making money. And so they're at the party until the party ends. Right? And so is your investment horizon short term? I'm putting money in the market or in an investment, and I'm going to get out before it implodes? Or is it longer term because you're a believer? Total?
Well, Meta is an exception because Meta so far has been benefiting from not having to pay for it. They benefit from the open source, so they are less of an investor. Sorry, I'm just going.
Well,
I question.
that's not what this slide's saying. Meta, if it's or these slides that Stephen was sharing with us. Just pull back. All right, yeah, okay. So they are smaller to an extent, but it's still a very large capex.
Meta are heavy contributors to the open source. They're the ones who are, have really pushed that.
Let me ask a question. If these AI models are so smart, if you go on Facebook or you go on LinkedIn, right? So Microsoft or Meta, why is it that they're asking the users, do you want to see more of this for various posts? If the AI was smart, it would be able to figure it out just from the behavior of the users. So I question how good the AI's models actually are, because it seems they can't even do basic things.
They actually are doing it based upon the behavior of the users. So how many times you scroll, how long it takes you to scroll in similar types. They're just reinforcing or expanding their data set.
Okay, so I'm going to go way back when, and I won't mention his name, but in the early days of Gmail, the person who was responsible for it, I was at Google's campus visiting with him, and he was talking about spam and spam folders. And he said, the best measure of the quality of our ability to determine spam from ham is how much ends up in the spam folder. Because if we're really good at it, nothing should end up in the spam folder. We should be able to decide whether it's good or bad, right? And even today, that problem has not been solved, at least not very well. So again, I come back to, everybody says how great these models are, but when I look at various basic tasks that one would expect them to be able to do fairly proficiently, they seem not to be able to do it proficiently on their own.
Well, it depends on what your motivation is. So if you're motivated by how much traffic flows through your system and how much advertising and ad impressions are, that's just, you want more spam.
I think it's also important not to confuse different types of AI models. Spam filtering was done much earlier with different kinds of tech. We actually did some very early spam filtering work ourselves, but people are not currently applying LLMs to the task of spam filtering, and their performance rates would be a lot higher. Also, the types of AIs that are coming, the reasoning AIs, of which DeepSeek and O1 are just the tip of the iceberg, are going to be way better at detecting what is and isn't spam, but nobody has deployed that yet. It's also going to be much more expensive. So there is also things that we haven't talked about here in terms of there is the energy cost and the compute cost for training versus the cost for actual runtime, what people have been calling inference. That's going to get lighter also. Like inference is what most people actually care about because the training is just a one-time investment.
Other
I do want to, yeah, I do want to mention, like, we're touching on a lot of things. I'm restricting my commentary because of time, but I have put into the chat because I got some messages about not being able to find the tweet I referenced earlier. So I put into the chat a link directly to the tweet that points to the Substack op-ed article. That will probably end up being a good place to do more detailed follow-up. So please go, join the Substack, I suppose. Right now, there's just the one post because I've just opened it. There's going to be a lot more coming, and I'll be doing some stuff at the a fair amount at the free tier. Even some of the book content, I will drop it on the free tier, but more will go on the more professional tiers. I think that a lot of the stuff that I'm hearing out there right now is causing some of the lemming effect that we were talking about earlier. And so one of my objectives is to help people to like sort of get out of the echo chamber that's driving a bubble in the investment that is probably not going to turn out well for a lot of people.
No existential questions to Kai this time?
I'll save that for other meetings.
What about the children? What do the children what should our children be studying?
Yes. I have been exhorting my two teenage daughters. I have a 17 and a 19-year-old that on the one hand always feel like they need to excel in STEM because they're the offspring of two pretty well-known AI professors. But I encourage them actually to develop, one is a pretty spectacular dancer, K-pop and everything. And the other is talented in ridiculously talented in visual arts, fashion, style, music, singing. Like she's fronting a band and she's the only one that plays all the instruments across like ridiculous amounts of genres. That is actually where I think value is coming back because AI is going to be automating so many of our jobs, including on the STEM side, that ultimately what they can't replace for longer is the human-to-human interaction and experience. People will still want to see that live kind of performance, not because a robot couldn't do it better, but because of the human-to-human experience. So that's what I would tell the children.
Fair enough. Well, it's 12:46. It's good to see you, everyone. I think we've covered a lot of ground. Put up some dust in the air, and I think we could do this every 3 months, or we should do this every 3 weeks, and then every 3 days. But I think we might do something with this in our survey, which could result in another discussion on this on February 25th in New York, if anybody can make it. So if you have any questions about New York, let me know. February 25th, morning allocator session and conference 1 to 7, followed by ping pong. Thank you, everyone. Take care.